In 1999, I was a freshman at Columbine High School. So we're walking up the dirt hill. We were kind of taken by two figures at the top of this hill, wondering what are we watching here? That's when they turned around and they started shooting at us.
And I've got every student in this library on the fly. You better stay on the fly.
I remember the shots being fired, the glass breaking behind me. No, how am I going to be able to get through this?
Put his hand on my knee and said, "There's no easy way to tell you this, your kid's dead."
Believe they're shooting at the front glass. Something's going on.
From the short 18 years that she lived, her legacy continues.
It's Carol at Pike Canyon. We've got somebody with a gun.
It becomes a new normal. Your universe gets a little smaller.
Columbine was the first of its scale. Nobody was trained for that. Even the aftermath nobody knew what to do.
While school shootings are unspeakably traumatic, what transpires during the first 72 hours following an assault can be just as traumatic and have a profound impact on a survivor's recovery. It's known as aftermath. This crucial element of healing is often overlooked, both in the planning of and the response to school shootings across the U.S. It's time to get it right. Because not only does aftermath affect a surprising number of people, if mishandled, it can leave scars that last a lifetime, and for some, fighting for their lives all over again. The stories that follow are from victim families, survivors, first responders, and educators who are sharing their personal journey so that we may better learn the lessons of aftermath. But before we can appreciate their journey of recovery, we need to first understand what they are recovering from. "15-year-old Sean Graves has been shot 6 times at Columbine High School, and he is one of the lucky ones."
The bullet entered my spine, popped my vertebrae, and then shot out my hip. That bullet I felt. Immediately, I was on the ground, I was paralyzed, waist down.
Unable to move, Sean hears the 2 gunmen approach.
While he's walking over, I can hear his boots, and I start holding my breath. It could have been a minute and a half, it could have been 12 seconds. It felt like an eternity. And I'm just laying there trying to stay as calm as still as can be.
As Sean lays bleeding to death, the gunmen enter the school to commit mass murder.
There's 2 really critical times in the life cycle of an emergency. The first is the first 5 to 10 minutes of that emergency. That's the life safety factor. What you do in those 5 to 10 minutes is going to save lives.
And help is coming, but not as quick as you think.
The school is in a panic, and I'm in the library. I've got students down under the table, kids, heads under the table.
I run out of my office and my worst nightmare becomes a reality because about 75 yards down the hallway, there's a gunman coming towards me. I remember the shots being fired, the glass breaking behind me, but we had a fire alarm system in there so loud, I could not carry on a conversation.
We were trying to stay away from the door, and hearing the gunshots reverberate through the school, and just having that realization, those are gunshots in my school. And I start crying.
We rake and break the window, go inside. We're looking for them, unknown location, and we get to the library. And it's still very vivid in my mind. And the first thing that I remember was the taste of it. There's a lot of blood in the environment. There's like a metallic taste in the air.
The eerily quiet library belies the unspeakable carnage. Police find multiple fatalities and the bodies of the 2 gunmen dead by their own hand.
To think that kids were capable of doing that, I think it absolutely caught us off guard.
As we walked out, they did take us right by the bodies of the students who had been shot outside. And I still don't think that the impact of what happened like hit me. I was still completely in shock.
The assault is over, but the clock is ticking for the next 72 hours. The first step is to safely reunite parents with their children, and there's little room for error.
We understand that the shooters and still many students, unfortunately, are probably still inside the school.
There was some misinformation spread by the media that everyone that was still inside the school was dead. Somehow rumor spread that I was one of the victims.
Unable to reach their daughter or anyone in charge, Heather's parents fear the worst. Their only source of information is the media.
And here come more of them.
Yes, absolutely.
They saw me come out of the building on the news. And my mom said that she remembered what I was wearing that day. So that's how my dad knew to come get me.
While frantic parents are directed to the makeshift reunification center, so is the SWAT team, fresh from the crime scene.
I've been a SWAT officer since 1980, and this was clearly the most devastating and traumatic scene that I've ever seen.
You had parents there that began to ask, you know, where's my child? Why are you here? I mean, there was one individual that called us cowards because the kids had died in there, and yet here we are at the school. The whole reunification process it's difficult, and I think we failed at it at Columbine.
One area that I have seen repeatedly that is done either improperly or wrong or a failure is the family reunification centers. It's something that a lot of, especially the police side, we're not trained on. And we're trained on responding, taking care of the situation, stopping the threat, getting victims medical help, and then we're done. But the reality is it doesn't stop there.
Reunification is where recovery begins. You know, the first 24 hours are critical.
I was being pulled in so many different directions, and I kept thinking, you know, how am I going to be able to get through this?
Since the tragedy at Columbine, many communities working with law enforcement have strengthened school security and adopted programs on prevention. Yet, decades later, serious missteps are still common during the aftermath of a school shooting, including one at an elementary school clear across the country.
That day at Sandy Hook, something that we never imagined, still really can't believe happened. It was a regular day. It was a Friday, in fact, close to the holidays. And, you know, I got my girls up and out the door to school, just like parents all across town were doing.
It was cold that morning because it was December 14th. There was frost on the side of the car, and I say that because I turned around to give Jesse a hug, and he had written with his little fingernail on the side of my car, "I love you," and he'd drawn hearts in all the windows. Knowing that that was one of life's moments, I ran into the house, got my phone, took a couple pictures, and then sent him off.
Newtown 911, what's the location of the emergency?
Sandy Hook School. I think there's somebody shooting in here. Sandy Hook School.
Okay, what makes you think that?
Because somebody's got a gun. I saw a glimpse of somebody. They're running down the hallway.
Okay.
They're still running. They're still shooting.
It was overwhelmed the moment I drove up, but it would only continue to get worse throughout the day. I saw a line of kids evacuating toward the firehouse. The amazing thing, though, about that line was that it was my second daughter and her class. So I remember, I think, probably breathing in my first full breath at that moment and running up to the line, connecting with her, and then sending her off with her class. I told her that I was going to head off and find her little sister's class, and then we would figure out what to do from there.
I was nervous. I parked my car on the side of the road and just ran to the firehouse. So I'm going up to anybody in a uniform saying, you know, have you seen my son? His name's Jesse Lewis.
But we weren't getting any kind of instruction about what was happening next. So it was really confusing. And I remember being very confused that I couldn't find any of our administrators anywhere. And it was actually kind of irritating to me.
Now, are they running on the outside or the inside? I would say that was the outside. There's still shooting going on, please.
All right, what about injuries at this time?
I don't know of any injuries right now.
I was just frustrated. And like, what information, please? Like, just tell me what's going on. How come nobody's saying it? Nobody's saying anything.
There was a lot of misinformation kind of floating around, so it was a very traumatic place to be, for sure.
As the hours tick by, the wall of silence only heightens the fears of parents still waiting for news. Many of them, parents of first graders.
It was beginning to be a smaller group, and a very upset group, a very traumatized group.
There was so much chaos. There were people yelling and upset and crying.
Reunification is where parents and students see each other again and families come together. There's a right way to manage crisis. There's a right way to manage recovery. And you do it with kindness and fidelity. You do it with respect for your kids and your staff and your community.
The Reunification Center is also where parents may learn their child did not survive.
Sometime around 1:30 when I got the first piece of real information, and that was that 20 kids had been killed and 6 adults alongside them. And I was not prepared for that. I had no understanding or expectation that even one person had been killed. So to get that information was, it was devastating.
Death notification is something the survivor will always remember. And how that is delivered can impact them forever. It will impact them forever.
At the moment that you tell a loved one that they have lost someone that's very important to them, right? They don't really hear much more that you have to say from that point.
So we want to make sure that that is done in a way that is sensitive and is trauma-informed.
And parents need to be told before it hits social media.
Finally, there was a guy, gray hair, I can't remember his name, but I'll never forget him. They came up, kneeled down in front of me, and said, put his hand on my knee and said, "There's no easy way to tell you this, your kid's dead." That guy was part of the riffraff that show up trying to insert themselves or help for potential clients, unfortunately. So then it was out. He's dead. And so I guess nobody knew what to do. What do you do after that, right?
Right now I came to support everybody that unfortunately were not lucky as I am. And I am thankful that God protected my daughter and I'm able to hug her.
The enormity of dealing with the aftermath of a mass casualty can overwhelm any well-meaning professional, and any misstep that re-traumatizes families can have a lasting effect on their long-term recovery. It doesn't have to be that way.
Having a plan for recovery and understanding that it's not just going to stop after the shooter is gone and people are safe. It's a long-term recovery and response. What people are experiencing post-violent event is just as important to focus on and plan for as preventing it.
Schools do such an amazing job today around the country of working with law enforcement and trying to build their active shooter programs, and they're willing to engage and talk about it, but they're scared to death of the reunification process, and they don't want to drill it, they don't want to plan for it. It's just scary, it's different, and they know it's different. So many don't have a plan, and that's one of the single biggest failures we see today, all these years later.
It is the deadliest school shooting in U.S. history. 33 fatalities, 17 injured. The victims include students and professors.
I had learned about the shootings at Virginia Tech from the media outlets, and we drove down to Blacksburg on I-81 doing 90 miles an hour and there wasn't a cop car in sight.
Joe's daughter Rima is a freshman at Virginia Tech, and he hasn't been able to reach her all day. The family heads to the reunification center at a campus hotel, where they will be isolated for the next 4 days.
When we walked in the door, they asked why we were there. And our response was, we're looking for our daughter. And they said, we don't know where she is, but we do have 3 places you can call to ask whether she's in a hospital or at the morgue. And they handed us a piece of paper with 3 numbers on them, and they did not bring in the experts to help, the crisis response experts to assist.
With the FBI, victim specialists have been trained via a national model in an effort to deliver death notifications with the most compassion and thoughtfulness that we can to a family that's going to get the news that their loved one is deceased. You know that you are getting ready to meet a family on one of the worst days of their lives and give them some information it's not easy to get.
Psychological first aid could have made all the difference for the Samaha family.
A stranger approaches us, a young man wearing a black shirt, black pants. I remember this vividly. And he approached me and he said, "I'm sorry to tell you Rima didn't make it." And I said, "Who are you?" Because I was taken aback by this person approaching me, giving me death notification of my daughter, and total stranger. Well, my wife and daughter collapsed in grief.
What you offer them is to be a support to them right there, to let them know that you're not going to leave until someone else can stay with them. You're not ever going to leave someone alone.
Part of the recovery process is actually communicating with others that have experienced the similar tragedy, to open up and talk to each other. They brought folks from the administration, they brought folks from the counseling center. These were their colleagues that were killed too. They were just as traumatized as we were. So that was a bad mix. That was not a healthy mix. It was the traumatized trying to help the traumatized.
If you were the institutional victim of a crime, it may not be, it will not be appropriate for you to be the service provider. If administrators who hid under their desks during a lockdown are then tasked with providing services and they have to take in other people's anger and heartbreak, then they don't have a chance for recovery on their own.
Getting the right players involved with defined roles is crucial to effectively managing the crisis. The right players being law enforcement, school administrators, and mental health practitioners.
Having a strong crisis mental health team that understands the need for emotional support in a school environment for our kids and our staff, that's really the important piece. They're true partners in the work of school safety. You can't do it in isolation.
Schools should be places of safety and sanctuary and learning. When that sanctuary is violated, the impact is felt in every American classroom and every American community. Today, our nation grieves with those who have lost loved ones at Virginia Tech.
I'll be honest with you, I felt we were comforting them rather than them comforting us.
As the survivors and victim families slowly come to terms with what transpired, the road to recovery during those first 72 hours will reverberate throughout their lives.
I remember even that day just wanting everybody to leave me alone. They had no idea what I had just been through, and we were watching it on the news. I got really angry at Bill Clinton for addressing the nation.
We must do more to reach out to our children and teach them to express their anger and to resolve their conflicts with words, not weapons.
I just was really mad at him for like, how dare you talk about this? You have no idea.
Not sleeping is normal. Feeling anxious is normal. Maybe being angry is normal.
We see different behaviors occurring from our kids. We see kids that start indulging in some self-harming behavior. They believe that, tomorrow may not be here, so I need to live for today.
For Sean Graves, it was living for the day that he would walk again.
I was in like a 12-hour surgery the first round, and then it was a 14-hour surgery the second round. Because of my injuries, I was a T12 incomplete, which meant I had a colostomy bag.
Starting yesterday morning, I could stand up without braces and lock my knees.
For some, the wounds may be physical, others psychological.
For a lot of folks after this type of traumatic event, there's a searching for answers that sometimes may never come, especially if the shooter committed suicide.
Experts believe at this stage of recovery that trauma-informed practitioners are a necessity, and assigning a police liaison can be the key to healing.
The respect, the care that we were, given by the law enforcement community was exceptional. It was well above and beyond anything that we ever would have expected, and it was an important part of the recovery process for us.
Everyone recovers at their own rate, and it is really hard to predict what people will need and when they will need it. What's important is to get information out early about normal trauma response so people don't feel like they're going crazy, or they don't try to hide it, or they don't try to tough it out, because the services will go away over time. And so it's important for folks to get help as early as they can.
And you have a finite amount of time to do it, to win back your school, win back your community, before that long-term impact happens.
Trauma is treatable. Exposure to a traumatic event does not have to define who you are for the rest of your life, but we need to get more accessibility to services to prevent those negative long-term outcomes and to really help individuals become productive citizens.
And the cost of untreated trauma is profound.
A traumatic event is like a stone cast into still water, impacting everything in its path.
What we know about mass violence is that it really tears the fabric of the community. It, of course, impacts the victims and the survivors in horrible ways, but it also changes a whole community's sense of safety and security.
We'll always care. It's our community. It happened to all of us.
It's been eye-opening to learn that tragedies like this, they affect so many people in so many different ways, and that, we all have a responsibility to one another.
School shootings can affect teachers who've lost students and colleagues, and first responders who've witnessed the carnage, even EMS and medical staff. Often, their suffering is overlooked.
Sometimes that's the forgotten majority.
We've got somebody with a gun. It's a stranger walked in the room with a gun, not a student.
A lone gunman enters Platte Canyon High School and takes 7 girls hostage in a classroom. One of them is 16-year-old Emily Keys.
Over the course of the afternoon, the perpetrator there stopped talking to negotiators, and really it was Emily doing a lot of the talking in the classroom to the SWAT team negotiators. While she was held hostage, she sent a text message, "I love you guys." And that was the last text message we got from Emily. I can tell you that when we lost Emily at Platte Canyon High School, every student in that school was impacted by that. Every parent of every student is impacted. Siblings are impacted. The communities are impacted by these events. They're life-changing experiences.
Some may feel immense grief. Others may feel guilt for surviving when their friends or their students didn't.
And it happened on my watch, and I have that guilt, and it's taken its toll. And I feel when people reach out to me that I have to help them, and I don't know if that'll help get rid of this guilt feeling.
For the most part, recovery is the norm in most cases when the right supports are provided. You cannot have a one-size-fits-all approach to crisis intervention.
This is where multiple doors of service in a community are really important.
You really have to provide them the resources and allow them the opportunity to talk and validate their fears, but also show them that there is a path towards recovery.
That you're not alone in your grief. That our world too has been torn apart. That all across this land of ours, we have wept with you. We've pulled our children tight. Newtown, you are not alone.
As a community, you go down the road of trying to support one another and to rebuild and to come together to hopefully try to find some kind of light at the end of the tunnel.
But it's hard. A traumatic event such as a school shooting can alter the course of your life in seconds.
It's impacted everything, every second, every minute, every hour, every day. Everything's changed.
Our lives were instantly changed. A lot of the activity that our family engaged in was around Josephine and her needs. She was the baby in our family. She was a special needs child.
When does it get back to normal? It does not. You have to redefine what normal is.
It becomes a new normal. Your universe gets a little smaller. Your perspective becomes definitely different. I used to be the only guy in the country that's been in 3 school shootings. That's not the case anymore.
I didn't want the new normal. I wanted to go back. But committing to the new normal and committing to forging a way forward together was a big part of finding our way through recovery.
You can't get back to normal when you got ghosts in your head. People realize, I'll never be the same as I was before this event, but there is a new normal, and it can be just as good or better than before.
It's a journey. It's a lifetime journey. You learn to live again and breathe again and laugh again. You learn to trust again.
Survivors, victims' families, first responders, and teachers have learned firsthand you can heal from a school shooting, but it could take a lifetime.
It's a marathon and not a sprint, and you're not going to wake up some morning and everything's going to be fine.
There's no moment where it's done. There's no date on the calendar where you can say, I've survived, I've beat it. It is a process, and I believe very firmly that it is a lifelong process.
A process that many don't realize they're struggling with until something triggers a memory, even years later.
I always felt like my experience was like not valid. Like I didn't lose a loved one, or I wasn't physically injured. So I spent years and years minimizing my trauma. I enrolled at a local community college and I struggled. One day when I was in class, they did a fire drill and I hadn't heard the fire alarm since that day at Columbine. I just started crying. Like, it's the first time I can ever really remember being completely blindsided by a trigger, and I couldn't control it. And I felt ridiculous. Nobody in my class knew what I had been through, so I just looked like some person who had lost their mind.
We know that young people experience the traumatic events differently than adults, and it's very important that we respond to their needs, whether it's the types of services that we provide in a trauma-informed response.
I couldn't believe that a year later I was still feeling the effects of trauma. I eventually dropped out of college and started working in the restaurant business.
Traumatic stress is a serious health problem. It's not just a mental health problem, it's a serious health problem. Persons with more significant trauma histories in their childhood lose not just years, but decades of life.
Untreated post-traumatic stress disorder can lead to lifelong problems with alcohol or drugs.
A lot of folks who go down the rabbit hole never give themselves permission to heal. They blame themselves, so they actually become a victim rather than a survivor. So permission is so powerful. that resonates with resiliency. Resilient people give themselves permission to do whatever it takes to get back up and running.
Feel more free, pretty much. I'm starting to be able to make my own decisions again like I have before.
Even after multiple surgeries and a diagnosis of PTSD, Sean Graves achieved his goal of walking at his graduation from Columbine High School.
Sean Thomas Graves.
It was nerve-wracking for me to walk across the stage at my graduation. I had a little mantra in my head, it was don't trip. And that's all I kept repeating to myself all the way across the stage. I don't like tripping in front of people. It makes me feel like I'm weaker than I really am.
When doctors have told him, no, you can't do that, and his outlook is, watch me. And that's why he is where he is today. And that mindset can be so big on your recovery and mentally and physically.
Resiliency also helped Principal DeAngelis lead Columbine High School for 15 more years. Resiliency helped Scarlett Lewis paint a memorial to her son and hang it on the outside of her barn for all to see. Sergeant DeAndrea and his SWAT team had a rough first year after Columbine, but he wasn't about to quit.
The individuals that caused this pain and, tried to devastate our community and killed kids, they've won if I choose to walk away. If I choose to let my heart be hardened to a point where this is just a job, there's no humanity left, right, then they've won. So that's part of what helps me drive forward, is because I'm not going to let them win. Well, we evolve. Stop the killing, stop the dying, start the healing. And absolutely we need to start the healing, which needs to take place the second that these things begin.
Outside of professional help, the best healing can come by something as simple as being with those who share the same experience.
Knowing that I wasn't the only one who was struggling was a gift. It was a gift to my recovery.
Heather didn't begin her recovery until she met up with other survivors at the 10-year anniversary of Columbine.
The 10-year really changed the trajectory of my healing. I re-enrolled in college. I got my bachelor's in English. It was really an uphill climb for me from that point on.
No two survivors are the same. No two journeys are the same. No path is the same. But finding others that are walking a path, it's incredibly meaningful.
I had my friends that we all experienced something horrific together, and it was because of that we were able to heal, but it was with each other. To do it on our own, it wouldn't have come out the same. I wouldn't be the person that I am today if it wasn't for that.
A husband now, and the father of a young child, Sean wants to give back to others.
For whatever reason that I'm still here and I've gone through this, or I've experienced this, or I continue to go through this, if I can just reach out and help one person, then it's all worth it.
Many of the victims' families turn their grief into advocacy to help fix the problems they encountered during aftermath.
Because I think if Jesse had the courage at 6 years old to save first grade classmates, that I certainly can have the courage to be part of the solution, to talk about it, to spread a message. I'm talking about social and emotional learning. I'm talking about teaching kids how to connect in healthy and meaningful ways.
Josephine was and remains the light of our lives. I would say that about our family, and I would say that about our mission, Safe and Sound Schools. At Safe and Sound, our mission takes us from prevention through response and all the way through recovery.
Others focus solely on improving the experience at reunification centers, where their world first came crashing down.
In the aftermath of losing Emily, grief is certainly an aspect, and sometimes it feels like the waves of that don't stop. It was 2012 when we introduced the standard reunification method. How do we bring students and parents back together with accountability and maybe even occasionally some psychological first aid needs? You know, and thinking about what Emily would think about what we're doing now, part of me thinks she would just laugh. She was a fireball. You're doing what? But I look at it, and Emily actually gave us a voice. And from the classroom, she told us what to say. I love you guys.
If you would have asked me 20 years ago, could a Columbine happen at Columbine, I would have said, no, it happens at every other community. But I think what we've learned on any given day can happen. And so we need to prepare and be more proactive than reactive.
The most urgent warning from experts today is that communities, schools, and law enforcement must plan now. Plan for prevention, for school safety, but also plan for the aftermath.
So there's something that I think everybody needs to understand, and I hear this from schools all over the country. Immediately following tragedy, we didn't know who to call. We didn't know what to do. And there's help out there, and there's a lot of hope out there with you and for you. You're never on your own, you're never all alone. You do have support, you've got help.
I think what Columbine represents is hope. Columbine is really that guiding light to show that there is hope after a major event happens in your community.
Out of the aftermath of each school shooting, new protocols emerge to help educators, communities, and law enforcement better manage the crisis, the recovery, and the prevention.
PREPARE is an acronym. It stands for Prevent and Prepare, Reaffirm, Evaluate, Provide and Respond, and Examine.
The PREPARE program focuses on prevention, skilled managed response to the crisis, and appropriate psychological response during aftermath.
So what the PREPARE model does is really empowers, and it provides specific training and a skill set that the school-employed mental health professionals and any of those that really serve on a multidisciplinary crisis team have to provide not only the short-term but those long-term supports.
Okay, so we just got notified.
The Salem-Keizer School District, a highly diverse and low-income community in Oregon, has their own emergency operations system. They focus on the physical as well as the psychological safety of the students and use intervention to help prevent violent students from reaching a boiling point.
The Salem-Keizer model is to capture kids in certain circumstances that would suggest that they're leading or headed towards violent aggression, and intervene early, and uses positive behavior shaping and positive incentives rather than punitive measures to help bring kids back in and help them become better citizens. Our goal is to include guardians and parents and the community in any way we can. We believe that it's better to have people detectors over metal detectors. And this is everyone: custodians, bus drivers, teachers, administrators, instructional assistants. Everyone is an educator.
A successful addition to the Salem-Keizer school structure is security field specialists who keep tabs on students throughout the day, every day.
So as much as we're observe, monitor, and report, we're checking locked doors, we're doing all that tangible stuff, we're also really involved in managing students and interacting with students, and the ability to engage and build positive relationships with students.
In the years since they've created this program, school-related violence at Salem-Keizer has dropped dramatically.
For school safety, you have to focus on external as well as internal safety measures.
The Jesse Lewis Choose Love movement focuses on social emotional learning and is being taught in all 50 states and was adopted statewide in New Hampshire.
Social emotional learning is lessons in the classroom, really, but they're really lessons for humans and how to have healthy relationships, how to manage our emotions, how to be resilient, how to make responsible decisions, how to be aware of what we're thinking, and how what we think and do affects others. It's pretty simple, and I say 100% that it would have prevented Jesse's murder.
The Department of Justice Office for Victims of Crime provides free resources to school systems, law enforcement, or a community before, during, and after an incident.
Copy.
Every day, in every community, a victim is falling through the cracks in our systems. They are. So if we actually fill the cracks before the incident, then our communities are going to recover better. To create a little safety net for people after mass violence.
When we come in responding to mass casualty, we're often referred to it as kind of the cavalry with the mass amount of resource that we bring into a mass casualty.
The FBI's victim specialists are trained to assist any community during the aftermath of a school shooting and can even take the lead in setting up reunification centers, family assistance centers, even resiliency centers.
We have financial resources that can assist alleviating some of the stressors of getting family members in or providing additional support. And we can also assist with providing support in death notifications.
In addition, there are 8,000 nonprofits in this country dedicated to curbing school violence, including crisis planning and preparing for aftermath. We encourage you to explore which might fit best with your rural or city school community.
There's no such thing as a perfect response. And what we want to be really deliberate about doing is examining the effectiveness of what we have done and also what we could do as we move forward to prevent future similar crises.
Columbine was our failure to understand a changing world. 20 years later, though, we're still seeing the same failures in school district responses all over this country. And we've had 20 years of learning. So our kids deserve a lot better than that. Our communities deserve a lot better than that. We better be willing to start engaging because this threat that we're facing, school violence, is not going away.
If we don't plan today, then we may end up joining the club of those left behind to grieve.
So Frank D'Angelo's principal of Columbine High School in 2006 said something that at the time just irritated me. He said, "Welcome to the club you never wanted to belong to." I'm still sometimes irritated that I'm in that club, but it was insightful. There is something about people who've had some shared experience in this arena that makes us family.
Even a member of the SWAT team who tried to save a young girl's life.
Emily Key's mother and father, Ellen and John Michael, have become family for me. And it is a beautiful thing that has come out of a tragic thing. And yet I still feel like I'm eternally in their debt because we lost their daughter.
You are never going to be the same person that you were before the shooting. How can you be? You know, the changes that I've made in myself, I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of who I am today, and a lot of that is because of all that I went through in the aftermath of the shooting.